good, Italian Job?
Man, I'm feeling good, but I'll be honest with you. I'm looking at our guests here, and it's like one of these things is not like the other. We have two handsome, dapper men, and then I get to be here with you, which is kind of nice. But hey, at least me and our guests today are wearing the same glasses, so I've got that. But you guys could pass as brothers. I'm gonna be honest, and I just kind of feel like I'm the guy driving the Uber.
I think as crazy as life can be, I prefer the term stunt doubles, but I'll take either of those.
I'll take that.
That's all good. We could talk a lot about a lot of things. We're coming off of, I don't know, something random I think happened on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
It seems like the whole world's in a tizzy. But if we wanted to do that, I would just say, get back on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Go check out your social media feed. I'm sure there's half the people who are thrilled and half the people who think everything's going to burn to the ground. But that's not for today's conversation. I guess you and I could have those one-offs if we want to, but not for today's conversation.
We usually end this show by saying be good or be good at it, but I'm going to say it now because if there was a time to be good, now's the time.
I'd say so.
Keep on keeping on. Let's just jump right into it because I know you're excited. I'm fired up. Our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Neal Foard. I was lucky enough to discover Neal's work while being the comms queue for F3 in Greensboro. And each week with our newsletter, I like to put out something motivational, something that offers a challenge, and found myself Googling quite a bit, motivational phrase, speech, video, whatever. And when I hit the bottom of that well, I wasn't quite sure what to do. And this was in 2020, mind you. And was looking for really good content. And the algorithm did its thing and introduced me to Neal's work. Neal has 30 years in advertising, is a hell of a storyteller, not just in the form of stringing words together well, but inviting others to do the same and finding the power that is in their story. So without further ado, gentlemen of F3 Nation, I'm proud to introduce to you Mr. Neal Foard. Neal, welcome to the Stuff We're Trying podcast.
Hey. Thank you for that welcome. And it's hoodie day, Italian Job.
That's it. Got my hoodie,
glasses, and the hoodies.
That's it.
One thing that
I love it. Well, we're thrilled to have you. Like I said,
we're having a little upload lag, and so what'll happen is we're gonna those news reporters that sit there and stare at the microphone for 15 seconds after the prompt. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all good. The power of technology.
That's it.
Neal, I think just a starter question, and I'll set you up this way and kind of set the tone for our listeners is oftentimes we are approached in our regions by local news or a story editor to share what we're up to. Why are you men out here at 5:30 in the morning lifting heavy objects and then circling up at the end and being dudes together? What is that all about? And we think we do a pretty good job of setting that table. And then we turn on the news that evening and find out that we really didn't own our story. And oftentimes we're misconstrued as something that we are not, for better or for worse. And I thought that since our paths recently crossed through our work lives, it would be a good opportunity to bring you on and talk a little bit about just kind of your years of experience and maybe what led you to share in the power of storytelling.
So as you mentioned at the opening, I came from 30 years in advertising. As a result of my career working for a long time, especially on the Toyota brand, Toyota, you may remember, some years ago had a recall of the Toyota Camry. It was the best-selling car in America at the time, so it was a very large news item. And watching news media bend and twist and pretzel that story into something that they wanted it to be instead of what it really was a great disappointment to me. Later, I had the opportunity to be consulted on behalf of, I can't remember the name of the publication, but I do remember this. The woman calling me wanted a data point breakdown of if I was noticing that there was a lot of single career women in their 30s buying sports cars as a sort of career reward. When I looked into the data, I discovered something very unexpected, which was that women in their late 30s, career women who had no children, were buying minivans in great numbers. And you're thinking, why would they do that? Well, because they were often aunts or they had relationships with children in other families, and they wanted to participate in the lives of their nieces and nephews and help their sisters or brothers with the raising of their own children. And so I found this absolutely fascinating and an interesting commentary on how women, career women without children, were nevertheless participating in the lives of children. I fed this back with great thrill to this journalist woman, only to discover that when she printed the article, she completely ignored my data and just ran with her original premise. And I thought, as you can imagine, when this happens to you personally and you see that up close, you go, if they're botching this, they're probably botching a lot of stories. And you have to be incredibly skeptical about news media on the reporting of anything. Can I offer you, though, from that experience and your original question, which is how might we be a little bit better at controlling the way we are perceived? And I would like to offer this. When people are looking for funding, say entrepreneurs, and they're in front of an angel investor or in front of VC, and they're doing a presentation about their business, the smartest thing they can do is start with the problem that people experience and how they're the solution to that problem. So, for example, they would come in and they would say, if you were going to be pitching Uber, you would say, have you ever been in Manhattan on a Friday night when it's raining trying to get a cab? It is almost impossible. What we would like to do is do something where you, using your phone, you can get a ride to anywhere from anywhere and paying with the app. That's the kind of way that they control the narrative, because what they're doing is they're providing the story already. In the case of your F3, what you'd be able to say is, you know how if you're a guy and you're looking for this kind of thing, what we do is provide that. And so by doing this kind of problem solution, you're actually writing the copy for the reporter. And they can just simply parrot back your talking point. To me, by being generous and providing the story for the journalist, you've actually controlled the narrative. It's a win-win.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. I've seen that work pretty well, and I've seen that not being applied and be a disastrous result more times than not, and not just within F3, of course. Italian Job, and I talked a little bit before we hopped online, and I think the moments that guys remember are not necessarily the workouts. Every once in a while, somebody will come up with a really great idea. We have a yearly challenge called Iron Packs, and it's a month of just awfulness, but it's a great playground for storytelling, because we'll relive our glory days. But that's not the point of what we're about. The point that we're about, one of the things we solve for is isolation in the male population, and those are the stories that we remember the most. The guy that's vulnerable, the guy that asks for help, the guy that cries out, or the guy that celebrates a win, right? And it provides that space for other men to realize, oh yeah, I'm not alone in this journey here. I too have felt this way. Italian Job, what you got?
Yeah, so picking up on that, oftentimes you're exactly right. The story, when I was in journalism, when I was writing stories, I kind of did it opposite of the way that I was instructed. I was told to hold things close to the chest, to only answer the questions that were asked of me, or only ask the questions I already knew the answers to, kind of like an attorney's approach. Don't ask anything you don't already know. Oftentimes what I would do is, hey, I'm going to write the story. I'm going to go ahead and pre-write what I think it's going to be. I'm going to fill in the blanks. And then when I'm done, I'm going to send it to you and say, hey, would you change anything? This isn't I got you. I caught you in what you said. I don't want you to look foolish. You don't want to look foolish. So my editors, I never told them that. I never told them that I provided in advance. But I was also a sports writer, so I'm not writing anything, hard and heavy. But, sometimes a coach in the moment says something kind of foolish, and I don't want him to look foolish. But I think the point here is, if you want to tell a good story, you need to have a good story to tell. You need to understand the reader, what they're looking for, just the same as ad copy. You're selling a solution to a problem. But I think what I love so much about viewing what watching some of your YouTube videos, and we're absolutely going to link some in the notes today. So guys who are listening, please watch. You're able to take a story, and I'd love to hear how it happens. But you're able to take a story, and within 3 minutes, you tell the story in a way that I feel like I'm sitting at the table in New York City, hearing, seeing them bring in a hot dog, but I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm there in the moment. So how do you take these stories and make them, one, so interesting that I'm waiting, I'm hanging on to find out what happens next? And two, how do you do them in 3 minutes? How do you take something so great and make it succinct so that I can read it and say, I feel like I'm there, and I didn't do it, in 45 minutes?
I appreciate that you like the stories I tell. I have the benefit of having done thousands of presentations when I was in my career in advertising. I was the one generally who would present the creative idea to people. And what you discover right away when you are in that profession of trying to sell ideas to people is that almost no one knows a good idea when they hear it. Like, we all think we would be able to spot a good idea. Brother, you got to sell it. If we were all really good at spotting a good idea just from the way it was described to us, then we would all be the heads of movie studios. You would never see a bad movie produced because like one of my favorite phrases is, every time I think I've said something stupid, I just remember that somewhere somebody said Sharknado, and the guy listening to it went, "That's a great idea," right? So
that's the winner.
Cocaine Bear. I love it. Okay, so
yes,
thousands and thousands of presentations, Italian Job. It teaches you to the point where you go, that didn't work. Whenever a stand-up comedian is a real journeyman, like they've done it a lot, man or woman, they learn things they don't even know they've learned. It's the art and science of repetition, of practice, that eventually teaches you sort of 5 or 6 fundamentals. And by the way, just to plug my own course, if you do want to get good at storytelling, and I'll go into a description of why it's valuable to people, especially in business. If they go to www.storyfire.net, I have a very good online course, which is sort of remarkably inexpensive for what it is. It's the distilled 30 years of doing it to say, here's what I think matters. Here's how I think you can get better. But practice is actually the number one rule. So to go back to your original question, which was, what are the sort of secrets? How are you able to take something that would have taken most people about 6 minutes to describe and get it down to 2.5 minutes and make it so that it has both detail and yet pace? You can keep it vivid, but you can also be quick. And that to me is the greatest of the art forms, is you get it, keep it moving, but don't ignore colorful details, interesting things that give it flavor and make you feel like you were there. And what I will tell you, that the videos that I do, which are generally in the neighborhood of 2 minutes to 3 minutes, it's the reason why that length, that's a pop song. That's what right? That's a 2.5 minutes is how long a song should be in the old days to play on the radio, to keep it moving and not bore anybody. Well, the trick to it from my standpoint is you got to write it down. You have to write it down and read it. And in doing so, you go, I don't need that. I don't need this and that. And what happens to people as they describe stories most of the time is they're throwing a lot of fat and empty calories into their stories, things I don't need to know in order to keep things moving. But at the same time, people will often miss an opportunity to use a colorful word. Like they'll say 2 guys had a fight. Well, you could say, man, there was a real fracas. Or you could say, I didn't want to get in the middle of that kerfuffle. When you use colorful language, which is something you have to deliberately plan for, when you use colorful language, 2 things happen in the mind of the listener. The first is that they get a kind of thrill, at the way how interesting it was. They give you credit for being intelligent because your word selection has indicated a certain level of, what's the word I'm looking for? To have a large vocabulary is a very impressive thing. And if you do write down your stories ahead of time and then read them back to yourself out loud, what will happen is you'll start to spot the opportunities to use interesting language. And then the second thing that will happen is you won't repeat yourself. Anybody who uses the word interesting more than once in a paragraph is not taking sufficient time to give themselves the benefit of more vocabulary choices. So I just want to reiterate there, or I want to go into a third element that I think is very important that people often underestimate. The stories you choose to tell me everything about you. Because if you tell uplifting, fun, encouraging stories, if you tell stories about people struggling but ultimately triumphing, if you tell stories where you're not the hero but you admire the way somebody else behaved, these communicate lots of things about you. It tells me I want to spend more time with you. If I spend time with you, I will walk away feeling better. I will walk away with more faith and more grit. You know, you were, I'll take a quick tangent to talk about why I think your mission of having guys working out together and then sharing the life experience, why that's so incredibly wise. Okay. The workout is a very important part of a component to give you permission to be your real self. Because when you work out with other people and you're doing something physical, you're expressing your masculinity. The masculine energy is getting expressed. It's venting. It's giving it a channel. The expression of the physical experience gives you permission to be a guy, to be the other half of a guy. You have nothing to prove after that, right? You've banged out 5 sets of 15 push-ups, and then you've done, whether it's, do you guys do what's your big thing? Do you guys do like up downs and, and anything that really wipes you
Burpees
out?
for days.
Burpees.
Yeah,
Burpees and cinder blocks.
Okay. Burpees are a highly significant, they're hard. They're really hard. And in expressing how an exercise that difficult and doing it together, you have nothing left to prove at the end of it. Now you're free to express all sides of your personality. Fatigue wipes out ego, right? It's like I left it all out there. You know, is it any wonder when you watch hockey and lacrosse or rugby, right? Hockey and rugby. Guys are thumping on each other for 3 periods or 4 quarters. They are beating the living crap out of each other. And what do they do afterwards? They go have a beer together because they left it all out there. Yeah. They've got nothing left to prove. It's paradoxical, but when you watch NFL players embracing at the end of where they have literally collided with each other for 4 quarters, and then they'll hug and they'll exchange a few happy words, and you're thinking, how is that possible? They were trying to kill each other moments ago. Well, it's because when you've left it all out there and you don't have anything left to prove, the only time it gets snippy is when somebody feels like their masculinity was impugned. Like, let's say, for example, that the Detroit Lions go out there and run up 60 points on you. You're not feeling real generous in that moment. I'll throw one extra sort of tangent on here, which is I had the experience of traveling to Vietnam when I worked in Hong Kong for 2 years, and I traveled to Vietnam. And when I was down there, I was sort of startled at how friendly the Vietnamese were to Americans. I was fully expecting there to be, enormous resentment and hostility. And I discovered the exact opposite. There was a kind of warmth and camaraderie that really took me by surprise. I asked an expat, about this paradox, and he said, "Oh, I can explain that quite easily. They beat you. And so they have nothing to prove to you. They think of you as an equal. They're welcoming you because you didn't impugn their manhood. They showed you something." And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Their generosity is linked to their confidence. So you guys provide an opportunity for you to get this stuff out of your system, to feel masculine, to feel capable, to do burpees for days. You've got nothing left to prove. Now we can be our whole authentic selves. You don't get that You have to do the hard work. You've got to feel like you earned it. And then when you feel like you've earned it, now I can really be myself.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I don't think, for the past 10 years, I've experienced it and seen it time and time again. Italian Job and I have the blessing of being able to travel a lot across different regions and meet other men that are doing similar things. Nothing's ever exactly the same, and that's part of the beauty of it. But every time it's like we get to hear, inevitably, at least a guy comes up to us and shares kind of their hero's journey of I was this and now I'm that. And I want to find new ways to give that away to other men and so that they can give it away to their families. Right. And doing the hard thing. We've all seen those t-shirts, right? Do the hard things, and it's not sweat, it's pain leaving the body and whatever. And we've got a tribe mentality. The difference about this thing that's F3 is it's not a tribe, it's a community where we come out together. We do actually do the hard thing. Some of us fail and we fail forward. Some of us succeed all the time and we call them bat flippers. And the beauty of it all is they circle back and pick up the guy who's in the rear. Always cover the six, leave nobody where you found them. And the most important part is that community aspect. It's in what we do, that we go out into the community and serve others, because we have an abundance of this thing that we've discovered. Who the hell knew it was going to be discovering it while doing our 100th burpee, but we discovered it. And now we realize we have so much of it, we have to give it away to others. And I think we oftentimes get so nervous when others outside the organization ask us what we're doing that we say we're a men's workout group. And a lot of times we end in a prayer. And then next thing you know, they've missed the whole, the workout brought me out for free.
Changed my life.
Then I found friends who helped me change my life for the better.
Unlocked the leadership I didn't know was there, made me a better husband, a better father.
Yeah, if I could jump in here to offer some counsel about the narrative that you describe, so that anybody in your team that's being interviewed would put their best foot forward in an accurate way. Let me offer this. You have to write that down before you get asked the question. You've got to write down what you're going to say. You have to have a 1-minute description about what you're doing so that it leaves the media person with two things. One, they feel inspired. So that in them feeling inspired, they're going to want to be sympathetic in their portrayal of what you're doing, and they're going to want to be complete, and they're not going to want to do a tidy little cliched description. That's the first thing, is they're going to be inspired. And the second is, in your description, it will reflect an accuracy that they're going to want to repeat. In other words, it wouldn't surprise me if they ask you to repeat it so that they have a better understanding of it. But let's go back to what that message is. I really cannot stress enough how important it is for you to write down what you're going to say. That doesn't mean you have to memorize it, but what it does mean is you have to familiarize and internalize a nice bite-sized description about what you are so that it's easy to repeat. What human beings are storytelling creatures. That is, they remember. Our default factory setting is to take in information in narrative linear form and to spit it out in narrative form. I'll give you an example of what I mean. If I said, okay, you've got an interview coming up tomorrow, make sure to hit these 5 talking points. Oh, Lord, nobody's going to remember your talking points. You're going to struggle to remember your talking points. We don't communicate in bullet points. We don't remember things in bullet points. On the other hand, Dustin, you probably haven't heard the story of the tortoise and the hare in 15 years. But you could tell me that story right now with pretty good accuracy.
Yes.
That's because that's how our brains work. Don't fight the way our brains work. Give the reporter, knowing that this is how they're going to interpret and repeat the world, give them a story. And that can be in many, many forms. But in order for you to know what story you're going to tell, you got to take some time. Think about it. Write it down. Read it to yourself. How does this sound? if you're really using your head, you'll take advantage of this technology. This thing is the record yourself telling the story and then watch yourself. And now I do a lot of coaching for executives in the C-suite, CFOs especially. They really take advantage of storytelling coaching, because you'd be surprised how the numbers don't reveal a picture until you reveal it. You have to describe what the numbers mean. You have to give me a narrative around okay, you've told me the financials. Why is that a good or a bad thing? You got to tell it. You got to describe it to me. Okay. When I'm coaching these CFOs and CMOs and CEOs, I say, you got to get comfortable watching yourself talking, because until you get comfortable, you're not really turning pro. You're just an amateur who doesn't want to do the work because it makes you uncomfortable to watch yourself. Do yourself a favor, turn pro. Grind until you're comfortable watching yourself. Then something magical is going to happen, which is when you watch yourself enough times, you start getting better. Because you go, I don't like the way I look when I do that. Okay, stop doing it. I wish I was a little more, okay, start doing it. Watch yourself. This is what you think stand-up comedians don't record their sets? Oh no, they record their sets. Why? To get better.
Yeah.
They want to hear what the audience responded to.
That's right.
They want to pick it apart and analyze it and say, why did the audience find that particularly funny? Well, I don't know, but I'm going to load up on that. Okay, so when you turn pro and you get comfortable watching yourself, that's when you become really dangerous, because the reporter or the media, or especially if you're on camera, the camera's going to like you better, when you are able to talk to the audience as your real self. Now, what I encounter a lot with CEOs is that they've lost the ability to be themselves. It's amazing, but what happens is when a CEO rises to a point where they're the head of the dragon, they're in charge of everybody, they think they're supposed to be this character, not themselves, but a character of themselves that's perfect and needs no correction and knows everything and doesn't need anybody, when in fact, the skill set that got them to where they are were probably a lot of human qualities that they're trying to sand off and sanitize. A sense that you actually need other people to help you. That you like when people are smart and challenge you. You enjoy that. When couples are married for a long time and they feel secure with each other, a guy is not threatened when his wife says to him, "Keep your feet on the ground, Einstein." You're not as impressive as you think you are.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. When your wife pulls you down a peg, that's a good thing.
The opposite of which is telling your wife just to calm down.
Bad news.
Okay. Yeah. You don't do that. That's not, no. Anybody that's been married for a long time and knows what they're about goes, when your wife is expressing a high level of emotion and animation, it's like, that's when you need to be a really good listener, because they're going to tell you eventually what's really bothering them. Yeah. Be a good listener. Being a good listener is a fantastic, think about in your own experience. Okay. So there you are, and you've all banged out the burpees. You're exhausted and people are expressing themselves. You'd be astonished how valuable it is for you to be a good listener. What are you going to learn from listening to other people's journey? Don't wait patiently for somebody to shut up so you can talk. No, pay real attention to people. And there's a reason that I am trying to be a much better listener. And that is that they give me stories to tell. When you hear other people's journeys, it's very revealing about the world. All of us are on a journey, and there's no more satisfying sensation than to realize and recognize in your soul, oh, I'm not in this alone. You only have to be there for people. And when, the paradox, when you are trying to be your most helpful, that's when you get the most help. When you yourself are motivated to help other people, you discover how it's everywhere, how supportive people are. When you are a good listener, when you're generous with your attention, it does tend to come back at you because of the rule of reciprocity that we all operate by. 87% of human beings want to return favors. They want to be good people. They really do. And giving the gift of your attention, serious, I see you attention, that is a remarkably powerful thing for executives in the C-suite. When a chairman, when a chief executive is really paying attention to some newbie, some intern, or especially to a middle manager, when they're paying focused attention, what a gift that is. Gary Vaynerchuk on LinkedIn this morning made a post, and he said, people that bosses that people love, they will do extraordinary things for them, and it won't feel like work. But when they fear you, they may be motivated to work, but it's not the same level. It's just not. What you really want is you want people to do things for you and not feel like it's work. Not feel like the sword of Damocles is hanging over their head. Rather, they wanted to help you. They looked at you and thought, I want to support that guy on his journey because I feel seen. I feel recognized. I just want to grab that dude's belt loop and ride this as far as it's going to go. So the idea of, like part of storytelling actually is having stories to tell. And the best way to get those stories is to be an observer of other people's journey and to try to be supportive of that. So I want to stress one more time for anybody that's going to be doing an interview, write down what you're going to say ahead of time. Get ready for that moment so that you can feel comfortable and confident in telling the story. And oftentimes it will involve your own, how you came to be part of the story. What were you looking for? What did you find? And you'll say, when you're a good listener, you'll know what people's stories are, what they came looking for and what they got. And oftentimes what they came looking for was this big and what they got was this big. That's exciting to me to tell that story. The 100%. Unexpected dividends that turned out to be the thing you kept coming back for.
It's not the burpees.
It's not the burpees. Tommy boy, you've told the story a number of times. I'll tell one story, Tommy boy, you tell another, and then we'll close it out. But I know which story you're going to tell, but I'll tell this one. Everybody's story seems very similar when it comes to F3. I didn't know I needed it until I found it. I thought it was just going to be working out in the park with a group of guys or in a parking lot or at a school. But what it turned into was a brotherhood, a fellowship, friends that I didn't have before. And one of the stories that really touched me, and it was short, it was brief, and it was a picture. A PAX that's what we call guys who are part of F3. A PAX had recently lost his wife. And one of his buddies came up to him the night before or the day before and said, "Hey, man, tomorrow morning, can you and I go for a run? Let's just talk." So he goes up to the guy's house and they go for a run down a trailhead. And they a couple miles later, after a good conversation and maybe a couple tears, they crest the hill, they walk out, and there's about 40 other PAX F3 guys holding candles. And as they came up the hill, they all were saying his wife's name and that they loved him and that they were there for him. That is F3, not the burpees. It's being there for someone else. It's the love, concern, the care, being the support system that in society we just don't seem to have. So that's the story of F3 for me. It's the elevator pitch of it's not just burpees. It's not just push-ups and jumping jacks. Tommy boy, please tell the story because it's one of my favorites of what you experienced with a young guy leading and who was in the crowd at the time.
Yeah, it was when F3 got human for me. Was the circle of trust. We had a VQ that day. Young man stepped out after leading in a great workout that he had put together, and you could tell he put thought into it and shared his thanks for our patience with him as he worked through his first workout. He had never seen himself as a leader. He was on the rebound from hitting rock bottom and was stocking groceries at a local grocery store. and expressed his gratitude for the opportunity to serve us through his leadership. And he said, I work at this, blank grocery store. And at that point, kind of as my brain was realizing what was about to happen, guy steps out from the circle and says, you don't know me, but I'm so-and-so, and I'm the CEO of that grocery store. And I didn't know that you worked there, but I can tell you now, if I had two guys just like you, we would be the number one grocer and maybe even the number one company in the United States, because we need more people like you. And I don't, even telling it now, I don't think there's a dry eye in the house when that happened. It was a really powerful moment just to create that space where you put in the work, you leave it all out on the line. You've gotten the hard thing out of the way for the day. And when that's validated, you feel like you can go out and overcome the insurmountable odds time and time again, because you've already done the hardest thing. And you realize, like Neal said a moment ago, you're not alone doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we have more opportunities like that, we realize that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's fear. And when we're afraid of less and less things, we get an opportunity to lead with love a lot more often. So that's a powerful moment. Neal, I can't thank you enough for being on and carving out some time. As somebody who has gone through Story Fire multiple times now, because I get to go back and rewatch and relearn, I can't recommend it enough. Fellas, if you are in a place where the power of the spoken word could benefit you and or others, storyfire.net is the way to go. We'll add that into the show notes. If you have not undertaken the joy of journaling, New Year's right around the corner. If you need an excuse to start a resolution, then go for it then. Otherwise, start tomorrow. The way I got into it was to write down, when I returned home, what was said in Circle of Trust that motivated me, who shared what that I could relate to, and either celebrate and support it or realize it as something that somebody needs help with and find a way to fill that need. And lo and behold, next thing you know, I enjoy telling stories. So, Neal, thank you for that gift. This has been a real treat for the two of us, and I know our listeners are really going to enjoy hearing it as well. You're obviously welcome back anytime. And if somebody has an EH2, put the emotional headlock on you to join your local F3 region, consider this the invitation to do so. It's just cinder blocks and burpees, so you'll be fine.
Hey, Tommy Boy, would you mind if I closed with a story? It's one of my favorites. And I think it's relevant to what you were saying about fear.
You read my mind.
So years ago, when I first started out in advertising, I was not a very good presenter, in fact. And I had the opportunity to stand in front of an audience of about 200 very wealthy and successful clients. In front of my bosses, I just shit the bed. It was a debacle. And it was so bad that I felt pretty confident that I was not going to have a job the next day. So I went to bed, couldn't sleep. 2 a.m., I'm tired of tossing and turning. This was at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if the bar's open. I'm going to go down there and have, 2 or 10 tequilas and pass out. I go down to the bar at 2 o'clock. I'm shocked, but it's open. The lights are on. I go in there. Now, there's nobody there except me and this Polish bartender woman. This was back when you could smoke in bars. So she had one hanging off her lip. And she looked tough. It's like she'd led a shipyard strike against the Soviets. And I go in there and I walk up to the bar and I said, "Can I have a gin and tonic, please?" And she looks at me. She takes a big drag off her cigarette, gives me the up and down and goes, "Yes, you could have something dull and unremarkable, or you could have the best vodka in the world. Up to you." So I said, "Well, I'll take the best vodka in the world." And she goes, "Do you mind? It's slightly illegal." And I go, "What?" And she says, "It has a blade of grass in it from Poland, and this makes the customs people wet the beds." So I go, "Oh, now, I'll take one." She goes, "Okay, good." So then she pulls out 2 glasses and she pours me 4 fingers of this vodka and pours one for herself. And then she toasts and she knocks about half of this back. Now, when she was pouring it, I noticed on her wrist, there was some writing in Polish, and it was a tattoo that it looked like you'd given yourself in prison. And I asked her about it. I said, "What does that mean?" And she says, 20,000 years ago, odds are good. You get killed by a tiger or a bear, you fall through the ice. And the only reason we're still here is because our ancestors learned to freak out about danger, because everything was trying to kill you. But now we have a bad meeting, we freak out. But it's not going to kill you, okay? So it says, Nyama tigrisa, there is no tiger. And I'm looking at her like, holy mackerel, you're reading my mind. And I said to her, I think you may be the greatest bartender in the city of Chicago. And she takes a big drag off her cigarette, looks me up and then goes, you may applaud. And it turns out she was not an employee of the hotel. She was just a gal who'd come down like me looking for booze. Everything was locked up. The only thing open was there was this bootleg bottle of Zubrovka below the bar. So she just decided to serve that to us. So there you go. Your next Zoom call isn't going to kill you. Nobody dies. Relax.
Outstanding.
There's no tiger. There's no tiger.
There's no tiger.
There is no tiger.
All right, Italian Job. You got any final words for us, brother?
No. I will save the words. I can't compete with that. I mean, half the stuff that I do is Neal's stuff, just retold in my. No, I have nothing else to add. It's been an honor, that. Neal. Thank you for being with us. That's it, man. I can't upstage that. The man's the pro.
Neal Foard with a southern drawl. I dig it. Neal Foard. All right, fellas, listen, you know what to do. The world is out there. It needs help. We have the opportunity to serve other people. We have the opportunity to rise above. We have the gift to put our feet down in the morning and get out and go work out with our friends. We got storyfire.net if you're looking for the tools. We got Neal Foard, who is an expert in the craft of highlighting other people, which I cannot applaud enough. So I will close in a slightly different way by offering you this challenge, fellas. Do good recklessly. Love you, mean it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
That's good.